Want to win money on sports? With Underdog, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash just by picking higher or lower on your favorite player stats. Millions of fans have won billions of dollars on Underdog. Will you be next? Download the Underdog app and sign up to get a free pick with your first cash entry up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Hashtag no music, no intro. We are back, and so is our dude, Coach Cody Alexander of Match Quarters and of FieldVision, joining SBP. Last time Cody was on the show was kind of during the middle of the season when the Saints still had Dennis Allen as head coach, and a lot has changed since then. No longer the head coach of the Saints. Hallelujah. There's been a lot of changes. So now the coaching staff is Kellen Moore is the new head coach of the Saints, and Brandon Staley, former Rams defensive coordinator, former Chargers head coach, is now the defensive coordinator of the Saints. A lot of changes, but all that aside, thank you, Coach Cody Alexander, for coming on. We appreciate you having on, man. Glad to have you back, man.
Yeah, glad to be on, man. Anytime talk ball.
So I just wanted to get your reaction, from a football perspective. We're gonna not have a Zach Bond conversation. I don't think I could handle it. I do. Respectfully, very happy for him as a player.
Me too.
We have no animosity towards Zach Bond at all. Like, that's the funny thing. Like, we're happy for him to play. But what was your reaction just as a football person? Like, you probably have one of the best football minds that we've had on this podcast in the almost 5 years of us doing it. When you heard that the Saints were hiring Kellen Moore, and then kind of that follow up that came later when they hired Brandon Staley, but they were very close to hiring was it the Colorado defensive coordinator,
Robert Livingston.
There you go. Let's just talk, what were your thoughts about that when you kind of first heard it?
Probably, Robert Livingston would have been an interesting hire. I don't know. They probably just felt like he just wasn't ready yet. But what he did at Colorado was pretty remarkable. That was a defense that was atrociously bad. As a Colorado Buffs fan, watching that defense the prior year was not fantastic. And then this year, obviously, he really leaned into the man coverage and four down front, what they were doing. So it would have actually, interestingly, it probably would have fit the personnel on the Saints probably a little bit better. But when you have a guy like Staley, who was sitting there, he took a year off, worked on the offensive side of the ball, which probably helped. And that's actually a trend in the NFL right now, is offensive coaches getting defensive guys to sit in the room with them. It keeps them in the mix, but it's also a different perspective. It works your brain differently, which I love that kind of stuff. So you have Staley there. I think they just want to go in a different. You know how this is. You don't want to necessarily come in. It's not going to be a carbon copy of Dennis Allen, but you're essentially running a very similar scheme. We want to pivot. We're going through a transition defensively, especially. Let's go with a different thing. And then it doesn't hurt that the Eagles won the Super Bowl with Vic Fangio, and then who's kind of the poster child for Vic Fangio? It would be Brandon Staley.
Yeah. With Brandon Staley, I just find it interesting to see if he's evolved at all. I'm sure he has evolved, but how has he evolved since his Chargers stint? With the Chargers, he was a head coach. That's a different job, even though he ran a defense there. I'm just curious to be like, what is he like? What does he plan to do? Does he adapt his stuff to what the personnel currently is with the Saints, or does he just kind of like, look, this is what I run, and we're gonna put the players in position, and hopefully they succeed. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Be
Well,
interested to see what he does.
That's what happened with him with the Chargers. I felt like, it just kind of fell off. I think if you talk to people around the organization, it just kind of the wheels kind of fell off. There were flashes of brilliance where they had really good game plans against certain teams. They got up for certain teams, and then there would be other game plans, especially defensively, where it just was like, what are we doing? Nothing's working. You have two premium edge rushers. You're dropping some of, look, Khalil Mack and Bosa are not guys that want to drop. And so now you're forced to pretty much play a 5-man front all the time, or you got to get into a 4-man front, which we found out this year. I mean, even the Chargers with Minter, they tried to run a lot of nickel with these interior defensive linemen. It just didn't function right. They didn't have, and it kind of faltered for them. Same thing with him. So I do agree with you. I think you're going to get the Chargers playbook. I don't think he's going to just come down and look. It's that people don't like it that I call the Shanahan defense, but that's what it is. It's that Robert Saleh 4 down. D'Amico Ryan's doing the same thing in Houston. It's a 4 down, running a lot of cover 1, running some quarters. I don't think he's going to do that. I think it's going to be the Fangio playbook. I think Fangio proved that you can do it. You just need a certain personnel. It's going to take some transition, and that's going to be on him. He's going to have to match what he's got on there, and hopefully he will do that.
Thank you. So I'm glad we're talking about this, because if one more person gets in my mentions or gets in this chat and says, oh, like in the draft, like, do you think the Saints are going to address players that are going to play in the Brandon Staley 3-4 defense? It's been driving me crazy. Cody, it's been driving me crazy. Can you maybe talk about, did Brandon Staley utilize a lot of just talk about the 3-4 in general? One, is it utilized a lot in the NFL as a base defense? And then two, did Brandon Staley utilize it a lot as a key piece, functional piece in his defenses?
All right. We need to just talk about first of what is a base defense.
Okay,
base
thank you.
defense. Yeah. So
take us to school, Cody. Take us to school.
I got base defense is essentially, what are you installing on day one? The moment the players walk through the door, they sit in meetings. What is the very first thing that sets the table? That doesn't necessarily mean what you're going to eat, right? The food can be different, but the table, that sets your table. Okay. So in a 3-4, your fit structures against the run, your player personnel, that kind of base, how many interior defensive linemen you're going to carry, that sets the table. That's essentially what you're going to be. From that is what you have on there and what you need. So a lot of times defenses install a 3-4 with the 5-man front. So when you get 12 personnel, you get 21 personnel, they will bring in the 3-4 as a base. But a lot of times you're playing some sort of a sub package. Now, Staley really liked the penny package, which is essentially 5 down linemen with 1 linebacker.
I have the clip of it. So people who are maybe listening to this podcast have no idea what Cody's talking about when he says 12 personnel. Running.
I got.
One running back, 2 tight ends, 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 1 tight end. So you brought up the penny package. Cody was great and provided us clips. So if you're listening to this, if you're not watching this on YouTube or the live stream, this is really the episode. If you're like a podcast and a car person, you really want to go back and watch the YouTube video of this or the live stream of it, because this has like what you really want to see. So you brought up the penny package. So I'm going to pull it up. Oh, against the Saints, no less. Thank you, Cody. I see what you did there. So let me slow it down a little bit. Okay. So this is when Jameis was that Jameis? I believe it is.
Yeah,
Jameis.
I think so.
Okay. So let me try to go back. All right. So this is the penny package that you're referring to.
Right. So imagine you have your base 3-4, but you need to get into a sub package. So you take 1 linebacker out, you put your nickel in. So this is where it gets confusing and convoluted, because if you say nickel, That could be the 5-1, which is what we see here. So again,
1, 2,
you've got
3,
your
4,
3,
5.
4, and then you've got a solo backer, and then you've got essentially a nickel out there. And then you also have a nickel package, which is your traditional 4-2-5. And so that's where the personnel comes in. If you have a solid 5-man front and you can play a lot of 3-4, then you can probably play the penny package as your base. That's what Staley really wants to get into. That's what he liked with the Rams. That's what he was trying to manufacture with the Chargers. Now, if we go to the family member, right? If we go to the Eagles, and the name we will not mention, but is an all-pro linebacker, was able to
Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Put some respect on his name, Cody.
I mean, let me just keep going, but not naming the name. But what you could do with him is you could play him as a edge, right? So you can shift some guys down. So they played a lot of traditional nickel where it's a 4-2-5, but when you have a guy like that, we saw the same thing with the Commanders this year. Frankie Louvu is an off-ball backer, but he can play edge. So it really depends on who's on there. So yes, to go back, go ahead.
Completely different point. That's what makes a player like Jalen Walker so enticing.
Like me, buddy.
Sorry. Just
when you get to go back all the way to the beginning for everybody, to go back to when I was using coach speak. So if teams want to get heavy on you, that defines your base. What are we going to do when teams get heavy? When they put those 2 tight ends in, when they put the 21 personnel in, meaning we've got a fullback and a running back, we got a tight end on there. Are we going to play a 3-4 or are we going to play a 4-3? That's the determining. So Dennis Allen was a 4-3. So if you got big, he was going to bring in that extra backer, right? Willie Gay was supposed to be that guy this year. Was supposed to be the guy, that third guy that would come in. So Staley's going to have to figure out, what do we have? Now, in this, he wants his defensive ends to be able to drop into coverage. So these are edges. They're the fancy edges word that has become into the new football vernacular, and they're not defensive ends. So that's going to be the sticky transition piece and how he's going to fit this thing in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be huge. Because currently the Saints have Cam Jordan.
Hand in the ground.
Carl Granderson, who, I guess you could squint and say maybe he could do a little off-ball things, but he's an edge rusher,
right?
And really nothing outside of that,
You are leaving out Notre Dame Isaiah Foskey in the mix, Ryan.
I'm just saying. So that's going to be interesting. But you talked about when teams go heavy, that transitions into the run game and how offensives are leaning more towards the run game, how it's coming back in vogue, we keep hearing, and stuff like that. So does that, does base become base again? Does the sub package, it's been a sub package league for so long, a nickel league, a dime league. Do we get back to just base defenses like we used to, or is it still? How are teams attacking with the run game? Are they doing it with the RPO? Are they doing it out of 11? How are offenses attacking with the run game these days?
Well, that's a great question because I had several conversations with NFL guys at the Combine about this. We are post-spread era. So offenses are not leaving point scoring behind, right? When we grew up, it was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Everybody gets in, tight. We're just going to run power until you can't stop it. Everybody's huge. Your Mike Backer is basically a stand-up nose guard. Yeah. The problem now is you have a team let's stay in the NFC, like the Rams, for instance, that play 11 personnel, but their receivers are required to block as though they're a tight end. So if you want to go base on them, they will run all of their spread concepts. You will have a linebacker on probably Puka Nacua, and then good luck, right? That doesn't work. Okay, well, you want to go light on them. That's fine. They'll use their wide receivers just as they would with basically a fullback or a tight end. And so that creates problems down the chain for defenses. So what you're seeing now in the NFL is what we were talking about with the Commanders, of being able to have this guy we have a box linebacker. All that means is he is an A-gap plug guy. He may take the running back on man-to-man if we think, he's not he's not a hybrid guy. But then we have another dude that we can line up on the ball. We can line him off the ball. He can rush the passer. So that's to me where defenses are mirroring offenses. And so as we get more into the run game, that's where it comes into is, can I trick you into going with your sub package so that I can run the ball? I think that's really more or less what it is that instead of trying to force fit the pass, we're now getting offensive coordinators just saying, fine, we'll run the ball. You're going to give it a 6-yard. Hey, we're starting to enjoy the 6-yard run again. So I think that's more or less what it is. I do think, though, you have to teach base now. I think that there's very few teams now. We saw that this year. There's very few teams. The Bills are one of them. The Commanders are another one, where you just are going to say, look, we're playing nickel. Tough luck. But you have to have a very special player at nickel in order to do that. And there's very few of them. The Chiefs are a good example of kind of, robbing Peter to pay Paul, where they moved McDuffie out. But then they had a lot of problems at nickel. Shamari Connor was adequate, but he's not an all-pro, right? So you kind of move McDuffie. And as we know, McDuffie's a really good corner, but he's not an all-pro outside corner. And so that's the conundrum right now for modern defenses. It's like, okay, where are we going to do that? And that's something Staley's going to have to figure out, especially in a division where you have the Falcons they have choose which running back you want to face. Right, the Panthers. The one thing the Panthers can do is run the ball. So it's like you have this division where they want to run the ball. They want to run a lot of play action. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that all formulates and fits in.
It's truly fascinating to see how it all kind of comes together. You sent me 2 more clips of Brandon Staley as the head coach of the Chargers. This is the three site. I'm going to pull this one up. If you go through this one, just kind of a concept for him. I'm going to try to go through it slowly.
Really, the one thing that you need to know about Staley is that since we were talking about a 3-4 base, okay, well, where does their coverage start? Their coverage starts in weak rotation cover 3. What does that mean? That means the down safety, the safety that's going to work down in coverage, is going to be away from your nickel or from the passing strength. So where are the most receivers? You're going to spin away from that. Now, the one unique thing about this defense, and really the adjacent defenses off of this, is that they want to try and play everything from a 2-high shell, meaning that they want to have 2 safeties deep. So when the quarterback looks and he's scanning the field, there's going to be 2 safeties deep. Now, the reason why they start with weak rotation is because it looks exactly, and our next clip when we get to it will be nickel 8, and it looks almost identical to what we're seeing. All sight, and it's unique to the Fangio scheme, is that they're gonna play cover 3 off the running back. And so all that means for that is that this is a leverage-based defense. If the running back goes straight to the flat, then you typically are going to get something low. So they let the linebacker hinge open and take it low. If the running back stays in the down, meaning that he's kind of either blocking or he works vertical, that usually means they're trying to buy the linebacker and run deep. So therefore the safety will stay high. It's very complicated. This is why it takes a long time for this defense to really hit. So
and I get
we're
it.
in the weeds, right?
No, but my concern as a Saints fan, not as a football, but as a Saints fan, I don't know if the facilities of what you're describing of what this defense needs is currently on the team, Cody.
Right. Now, the beautiful thing, and I will say this, one thing Staley proved with the Chargers is that he is more than willing to play man coverage. They just do it different than the way that Dennis Allen did.
Interesting.
They are always going to have a backstop. And what I mean by that is they will always have a player that is going to cut some sort of a crosser off. Like, you will not just be able to run across the field. Modern football.
Right. What is that like?
What? I know. So
they can do that?
Yes. It's not going to be a 5-man pressure with basically, cover one with a guy 30 yards deep and everybody hoping that they can run with the receiver.
We've seen quite a bit of that in New Orleans.
Yes.
Quite a bit of that.
Yes.
For years.
So that is one of the things, so as you're looking at this and, the numbers are all circling around, you're like, how the hell is this going to work together? This is one of those things where that he does have that. He proved that with the Chargers. He does not mind running man. But the reason why I brought up the 3 site is because, one, that's a day one install for them. It illustrates what they're trying to get to.
So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to it just to illustrate of how important it is from like a foundational piece of what Brandon Staley wants to do.
Because all this is we have a 3-by-1 alignment by the offense, but we're going to spin away from the passing strength. So we're going to bring that safety down opposite. And we're going to read the back. The back's going to tell us what we need, where we need to fit. And that's all that is. It's no different than on the front line where you're reading the block and you're reacting to the block to where I need to fit in my gap, which is that's the coach speak term of gap and a half, which is what Staley likes to play, meaning I'm going to put my head in one gap. If the ball crosses my face, I'm going to work to the other gap. And that's where that term comes from. And what you're trying to do really is keep your coverage defenders in coverage as long as possible. The big knock on the Fangio scheme has always been run fits. And so that's part of it. You're going to give up a little bit in the run game. And that's because you're trying to just say, we're going to be like a vice, and we're just going to vice your passing game until you turn into a check down Charlie.
One term that I've heard a lot when studying Brandon Staley is pattern matching. What does that exactly mean? Like, I have a concept in my head, but from a football, coach's perspective, what does that mean? Pattern matching.
Pattern matching means that you are going to play it as much of man as possibly can. So we're going to play zone, but we have an indicator. Typically, it's going to be the slot, so the number 2 receiver if you're counting outside in. It could be as simple as if he goes out, I take him. The corner goes. That would be like a palms coverage or a cover 2, where if he hits the flat, I'm going to stay over top. Now the safety can kind of detach. So in cover 3, though, it really means we're playing almost like cover 1. So imagine everybody goes deep. We get 4 verticals, which is rare in the NFL, but it's the easiest way to explain it. If I get 4 verticals, it's going to look just like cover 1. You won't be able to really tell the difference because everybody's going to match those verticals. And so that's where that means it's not spot drop. So in spot drop, that means everybody's going to working to a spot and then they're going to turn and they're going to get their vision on the quarterback. He does not like that. That's one of the big differences between like what we saw with Mentor and what McDonald runs because they're similar but not the same schemes. And they really, in their cover three, they're trying to get to a spot. They're not really matching it up. They want to play more match within their split field world. And so with Staley, they're trying to do more match cover three. And that would be the more of a difference between him and Fangio, is he wants to play that match cover three. And then we're going to play a little bit more zone-ish with our split field coverages.
It's gonna be interesting to see how, and we have no idea, right? There's free agency, and then there's the draft, and this is a deep draft for defensive linemen, for edge rushers, and for like safeties, right? So, and the Saints need every one of those. They also need a lot of help offensively. It's going to be interesting to see how those things align with like the vision, right, of what Brandon Staley wants. I can think of a player. I'm not saying that the Saints are going to draft this player at 9. If they don't draft him at 9, I don't think the NFL is going to be dumb again like they were with Brian Branch. But Barron from Texas, like what you're describing feels like the perfect kind of secondary match type of player for like the Brandon Staley defense. In terms of just his versatility, in terms of like kind of this, I know at Texas they kind of ran a lot of zone coverage in terms of what they ran. Very similar. It feels like that would be like a good fit. I don't think he's like in play at 9, but I'm just thinking of players that matches like system, right?
Yeah.
We asked you this the first time you came on our podcast. You knocked it out of the park with Quinyon Mitchell, had an absolutely stellar rookie season. I know you don't get really into the weeds in terms of the whole draft process, but we asked you like one player, for the draft that, you would kind of bang the table for. You said Quinyon Mitchell. You were absolutely right. This upcoming draft, one player that same thing, you would just bang the table for if you had an opportunity, if you were in the front office on draft night.
The guy that I love is Malachi Starks from Georgia.
Really?
I mean, the dude, everybody's obsessed with the kid from South Carolina because he won the Underwear Olympics. But you watch Stark move. We were watching some of the stuff together as a team for FieldVision, and we're watching the safeties kind of go through the drills, and it's just like, that guy is not the same as everybody else. He also comes from a system in Georgia, which is probably has a larger playbook than most NFL defenses.
Dan Jackson, that's my dude. I love Dan Jackson.
So, I mean, to me, I liked him. I liked him when he was in. I liked him when he was in college, and then also too, just as my preliminary, as I'm starting to watch some of these guys and getting into the weeds with it. That's a guy that if you are a multiple zone, multiple defense on the back end, that's a guy that you definitely want to try and get.
Interesting. Kind of flipping back to the NFL. I found the Super Bowl so fascinating. I was reading some of the stuff that you wrote about the Super Bowl and what Vic Fangio did. One interesting thing you talked about is everybody focused on the front four, the Eagles' front four, which is amazing, like no question about it, and what they were able to do to the Chiefs' offensive line. But you talked about how, what Vic Fangio was able to do in the secondary with coverages. And I guess how he tries to make everything look the same, snap to snap, but then kind of change it up. Can you talk about that a little more? Because I found that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, essentially what he did was he knew that the engine really is Kelsey. And I know that he's kind of fallen off a little bit, but if you can vice him and you can lock everybody outside, what they really try to do is pack the middle of the field, which is where Mahomes really wants to try and throw the ball. And they said, look, we've got two corners that can essentially play man-to-man on the outside. If you want to go run fade routes, have at it. That's not what the Chiefs do. And so essentially he just created a vice in the middle of the field. He packed the middle of the field and said, you're going to have to go everything outside. If you remember late in the game, they were able to attack with Worthy deep. right? And kind of split some of those looks, and it was interesting to me that, everybody wanted Worthy to be that deep guy, but if you're going to be the deep guy, you got to be able to play on the ball outside. He just can't do that. And so the Chiefs have to manufacture his looks for that. And they were able to finally, Reed went in and said, let's just throw the ball down the field.
Yeah.
By that time, the Eagles were kind of playing a little bit lax. They got a couple of them, but to your point, what they're trying to do from that too high shell is what I was alluding to when we were kind of going through like the weak rotation cover 3, but then you also have that quarters look where you have this layering effect in the middle of the field and it all looks the same. So modern quarterbacks are taught to really read the safety away from the nickel. That's usually where their first eyes go, or if it's a half field read, which means they've split the field in half. They have one side that they're really trying to look at. And it's normally that intermediate player. So the guy that's sitting in the middle, the leverage player, nobody looks at the corners. It's too far out there. But the way that you can tell what a lot of these coverages are is how the corners play. Well, for a quarterback, he can't stare at the corner and then try and figure out, because then the safeties are going to move and then you have no idea what's going on inside. You may know what the coverage is, but then they can get to it in different ways. And so it really makes it difficult for a lot of these quarterbacks is that they've been taught since they were like 12 years old in coverage. You read the leverage indicator or you read the backside safety. Well, when all of that looks the same, you hold the ball. And what happens when you hold the ball in the NFL? You get sacked. And so that's really where his scheme has come in. Everything looks muddy. I mean, people that even follow Fangio and like that are like pundits, they're trying to figure out like what the Eagles are running on coverage. It takes you a long time. Sometimes you have to stare at it a couple of times.
Because people were saying like, oh, he's just running quarters. And it's like, no.
No. And what the funny, yes, and the funny thing about him is that he ran a bunch of quarters later in the year, and I think that had to do a lot with personnel. When you have two guys outside that you can lock them down, you can just play quarters. It's kind of the luxury that you bring. But I think for him, it was, he really does not want to run quarters. People want to throw him in the quarters. He doesn't run palms, which is a coach word for like to read. They're playing the easy way to explain it would be if number 2 goes out, the corner is going to take it. Safety then works to number 1. It's really what the Chiefs run a lot of the time. He wants to play zone coverage. He wants to play eyes on the quarterback. He wants to play a little bit of a loose pattern matching, which we talked about, but not a hard pattern matching where everybody's playing really sticky. And so that's kind of the difference of where he is. He's really on his own a lot of times in the way that he runs his coverages. And though the funny thing is that more and more people are trying to play around with the way that he's been doing things.
It's such a fascinating and honestly amazing of how Quinyon Mitchell and
with so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Iowa, I'm blanking on his
Cooper
name.
DeJean.
Were able to come in as rookies and for such a complex defense, just pick it up, and you would have thought they were playing in that defense for like 3 or 4 years. Like it was just silly.
Well, this goes back to the GM and how smart they are in selecting players. Quinyon Mitchell played in a quarters-heavy system in Toledo. He played a bunch of different techniques. So when he came in learning what a soft squat is or how to play cover 3 in different leverages, that's like, and for a corner, cover 3 and match is basically playing quarters, or it's basically playing man. You're just doing it off of different leverages and different techniques. Well, I know his coach from college. He's now at Illinois. They were doing that at Toledo. Then you go to Cooper DeJean, who comes from the university for quarters coverage, which is Iowa.
Wow.
They do run match cover 3 as a changeup, and actually they've been more of a cover 3 team the past couple years. Again, you're putting into a system. You're running multiple things. You're already talking game plan with your coach. You're coming from a good program with a lot of technique. The other thing is both of them are willing to tackle. And it's just, when DeJean got into the defense, it was like they plugged the thing back in. This is what it's supposed to be like.
Also, but all that you just said, Ryan and I have been doing this podcast for almost 5 years. That is a continual vision of a team. And it's something that we've been asking of the Saints, of like what the vision is. When you're GM and your pros, your college scouting can say, okay, this is what our defensive coordinator does. This is what he runs. This is what our offense does. And then can plug that in when you're scouting players. Like, everything in essence kind of goes hand in glove. But if there's that dysfunction, or just that, it all gets out of whack. And anyway, the question I had for you, we don't want to take up too much of your time. I do want to kind of get to some FieldVision stuff, because FieldVision is amazing, fantastic. I kind of wanted to see how that went for you going through the first NFL season with FieldVision. But we spent a lot of time talking defense, and I know that's kind of like your specialty. But we're talking about the Eagles, flipping to the offense, flipping to the actual head coach of the Saints. He is an offensive guy. Just overall thoughts. Kellen Moore, I know he only spent that one season with the Eagles, but just kind of maybe his maturation, from Dallas to Chargers to the Eagles. And we talked about base themes or base concepts for defensively. What, as Saints fans, maybe can expect in a Kellen Moore offense going forward, as he is the new head coach for the Saints?
Well, I think it's going to look very much like Sean Payton. I mean, it really is. It's not going to be that much of a departure. I think the one thing that you notice, there's not a lot of pre-snap movement. I think he did a lot better job with the Eagles of moving guys around. A lot of things are either going to be quick game, easy completions for the quarterback, and then we're going to take our shots down the field when we get a chance. The one thing that's kind of a knock on him is that he does not use the running back in the passing game. Now, even if you go back and you look at a lot of what Saquon Barkley was doing, a lot of that I think was, kind of, hey, we probably need to run him down the field because he's also a really good receiver. Don't forget, because like if you go back to even when he was with the Chargers and then when he was Cowboys, they just were not passing to the running back down the field. It looked a lot like the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, their running backs are great with the ball, but then you go and you look at their ADOT, which is like, where are they getting the ball? It's all negative. Right. So they're getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage. A lot of things like that. Hopefully having a guy like Saquon, and actually, it's one thing to not do it because you just don't have a guy and then you just don't ever evolve in that, but then you have a guy. So hopefully he can bring some of the things that he did with the Eagles with them. I mean, Kamara still can and is still one of the better hybrid running backs in the NFL. So it's going to be, it's like the Sean Payton, right? You're going to get a lot of slants, you're going to get a lot of hitches, you're going to get your slot fades, when you get in the right cover structures, and then you're going to get, as everybody runs, you're going to get your crossing routes. But then to me, I really think he doesn't want to move a lot. So you're not going to have the highest motion rates. You're coming from a guy that was trying to run the Shanahan system, so there's a shift in a motion. Sometimes even they have a whole list of double motion plays, right? Yep. Those are gone. You're probably going to get one shift or one motion. It's probably going to come every other play. A lot of quick game to help the quarterback out, and a lot of play action off of it. And I think that's gonna be. I think it was good for him to probably go to the Eagles. Just because I think it was good for both programs, because you kind of had basically a college offense that had been caught up to by everybody. And then you have a guy who needs to probably incorporate a little bit more spread schemes into the system and not just be so NFL, the traditional. So I think if you get a little mix of that and if he can bring what he's at, I think that'll be a good mix. He's not trying to be something that he's not, which is I really feel like the Saints were last year of just we're trying to be the Shanahan offense, and it just you didn't have the guys to do it. You just didn't have the people to do it.
I thought you had something, Adam.
No, that was it. Well, I'll let you go.
Okay. I mean, the interesting thing to me with Kellen Moore is like he was kind of always known as like this kind of pass happy guy, and then you get Saquon Barkley, like you're gonna run the ball. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just kind of fascinated with him. Is like will he carry some of that over? Like has he learned through his Eagles experience, through his Chargers experience? Well, there's a lot of questions about him with the Chargers, man. Like how do you have this stud quarterback, Justin Herbert, and, the performance was where it was at, So I think, that's going to be interesting. And, he's going to do it with Derek Carr, apparently, allegedly.
Maybe.
Allegedly. I mean, the pieces are there. I think that my hope is that they do, that's the thing is that when you kind of get away from Mike McCarthy, who's going to go walk down the sideline and tell you, hey, you need to run the ball. Same thing at the Eagles, like, hey, we have the best running back in the league. He's about to rush for 2,000 yards. Like, you need to run the ball. What happens when you are the guy?
Right.
And that you don't have to answer to anybody. You want to throw the ball 40 times in a game because you can. Like, nobody's going to tell you no, right? So
right.
That is going to be one of those things that he's going to have to prove is that in that first game where running the ball is a little bit hard early, are you going to go full Cowboys and just start throwing the ball, with Dak Prescott, which is not, that worked there, for a while. It doesn't win you playoff games, but, that's going to be, I think you're spot on. That will be one of those things of the maturation of can you, again, like I said, can you bring some of those run concepts with you? Let's run the ball even when it's not working because it sets us up later. It sets us up for success later as well.
It's funny. It's funny with the Sean Payton analogy because that was such a knock for Sean Payton as a head coach because like he would get super pass heavy and he would like ignore running the ball. And even as his stint as a Broncos head coach, like he's going to run the hell of that ball. Like it's such in like a function of him as a head coach now that he's been also a head coach for like 20 plus years now. Right. So like you kind of like you learned, but it's just funny just watching kind of that evolution of him. I want to ask you this question because we're going to talk about him this weekend, and I want to kind of jump into FieldVision before we let you go. What are just because I have like me and Ryan kind of have our impression of him as a player. He's getting some pop, some buzz, but potentially being linked to the Saints at 9, and he might potentially be the draft pick, and I could see it. Tyler Warren, he's such a. I don't know if I would call him polarizing. Maybe he's just more polarizing to Ryan and I. Your thoughts about him as a player? A lot of people, in the draft media, a lot of people have him as a top 10-ish, top 5-ish player in the draft, and I think Ryan and I still are. We're a little confused by it. Like we like him as a player, but we're just like, oh, okay, maybe, all right. But just your thoughts about the Penn State tight end.
Well, so you have in the tight end world, you have a Y and you have an F. So a Y would be like a Kittle, and F would be like a Kelsey. That's usually the best way to do it. Warren is kind of that. The problem with a guy like Warren is you kind of have to have a plan for him. If he's gonna be a Y, he probably needs to spend a little bit time with the O-line, right? Like we got to clean up the block. And he's big enough to do it, but just because you have the size doesn't mean you have the want to or the ability to do it. I think the reason why he's so polarizing is because in people's minds, you can imagine what he could be right? And oh man, you could do this. He's basically you could have two Taysom Hills, right? You essentially have two guys that could line up at quarterback, they can line up at tight end. He can be a receiver. If you hand him the ball, he can carry the ball. The problem with that is what do you do with two guys that are like that, and you're already paying one of them a big price, right? So like, what are you going to do? You can have them both in the back. Then sometimes you get too cute, right? So for me with Warren, I like him. His film is good. He was in a good system that really highlighted what he could do. I think he's more of an F than he is a Y, which that changes some things for you if you are trying to run the ball. And you have it, you need to have another guy. That's why I think it's weird that the Raiders are trying to get rid of the Meyer guy.
Yeah.
Because you have an on ball and an F. You have a Y and an F. They're both really, really good. You can be in 12 personnel the whole entire time, which just stress. I'm a defense. I do not want to see 12 personnel with a tight end that can actually catch the ball. Like, I don't want to see that at all. You got extra gaps and I have to defend the pass. Like, that's nightmare scenario. So to me, what happens though in that sense is like, okay, you've got both of your tight ends essentially are Fs, meaning that they're flex. How are we going to run the ball out of this? Right? Because at the end of the day, like, you have to run the ball, right? You run the ball to win, you pass to score. You know, right? It's the old adage of that. That's true. We just talked about what happens when you decide you just want to go throw the ball 40 times. It's not usually a recipe for success. So to your point with him, he needs to go in a system where he's not going to be asked to block a lot. That's going to have to develop. Do I think he's a fit with the Saints? I mean, we just kind of talked about it. You probably need to have an online tight end if you're going to keep Hill, and maybe he's not the guy that you want to go with.
Fascinating, interesting. Any more questions for Cody, Ryan?
No. Let's get into FieldVision.
Just as we finish up, thanks again for coming on. Oh, you cut out there, Ryan.
No, I said let's get into FieldVision, man.
FieldVision, shout out to you. Shout out to Scott's brother. How was that first year for you guys with FieldVision covering the NFL? We obviously are big fans, big proponents of FieldVision, want the best success for you. But how was that kind of first journey with having FieldVision and covering the NFL using kind of FieldVision, your Havoc ratings and all that for that first year?
It was awesome. The experience of we went in, we really built this whole thing within 6 months, which is amazing. Wow. It just shows you how much talent we have. I remember really this time last year, we were kind of conceptualizing what we want, what we thought was important. And then to go fast forward into September, it looked really good. And then you kind of see the algorithm degrade over time, and then you have to adjust. And then like you find things that you thought were important aren't, things that were kind of on the fringe are now important for like how you do this. To me, it was awesome. Just, it works my brain in a different way. It's not just, X's and O's and what we're seeing on the field. A lot of the times it was kind of like player matchups and things that typically I didn't have to think about. So it really helped me in that sense. Just showing too that we could do it. I think we were 60. Scott's got the numbers, but I think we were over 60% against Vegas on the majority of what we were doing. Anytime that we have a like a metric that tells you kind of the quality of it, a matchup index. Anytime that matchup index was kind of above 10%, we were 90% correct on it. So if you could use our app for betting, it's kind of, we wanted to build an everyman's app. Right. If you want to do it for fantasy football, we got it. If you want to do it just to bet, we got it. Team matchups, we got it. So now going into year 2, transitioning, we're going to have FieldVision Pro. Hopefully it's going to be here within the next week for free agency, which is essentially like a whole suite of player analytics, being able to kind of pick and choose what you want to see. Obviously, on the front porch is going to be our Havoc and Threat, which I think are the best player ratings. In fact, I've talked to several people that work for other organizations that have player metrics. In ours, they like ours better. So I think we're on to something.
Get rid of that PFF No PFF, FieldVision Pro.
And I think the thing that with going on top of that is that we're not ticking a box. These are on-field production. We've been able through, again, we have brilliant data guys that through basically, AI and machine learning, we've been able to quantify plays on the field and then be able to kind of then go back historically. So, if you get a 99 rating at the end of the year, that means you're in the top 5 seasons for the last 6 seasons. So it's exciting. FieldVision Pro, and then kind of the things we've partnered with Shot Quality, so we're going to be able to have live data during the season. They already have a plugin with DraftKings, so like there's a hope that's something that we can. So we're growing. It's going forward. There's a lot going on. It's awesome. I like it because I can just be a passenger and let Scott's amazing at what he does.
Yeah, he is.
Because match quarters, I run it. It's my thing. I do it every day. I'm driving the bus. It's nice to kind of be the passenger and be like, hey, you need this done. Boom, got it. Changes the way that you look at things, which is I'm always trying to get better, always trying to learn new things. And so it's been fantastic. The app is still like for free. You can go download it. And it's, if you want analytics, data, all that stuff, you can go check it out.
Passenger prints for FieldVision Pro. What is that going to be for like consumers and fans who want that per month?
So if you want the whole thing for FieldVision Pro is essentially like if you wanted a True Media or SIS, PFF, FTN, you want that data and you want to look at it, we are going to have that at a little bit better price point, and then we are going to it's for the data viz, so it's visually appealing. You can sort it and cut it any way you want. It has all of our player metrics in there as well. So it'll basically be the app amplified, right? Because on the app right now, you just have the Havoc. But when you go into FieldVision Pro, I can look at a guy like, I can go and look in it and say, like Tyrann Mathieu, I can say, okay, how good was he in zone? How good was he in man? How good is he against run?
Oh, man.
And then you can cut it up in different ways, and all of his stats and advanced metrics are going to be there as well in his player card. And then you factor that with the team. What we wanted to do is have it ready for free agency, because our team player cards are going to essentially have the average threat and havoc ratings for each position group. So you can track during free agency, okay, we signed this guy. Does he fit? Yeah, does he fit? Does his metric? Okay, he's really good in man. Well, we play all zone, so why did we sign him? Things like you can really. It was fun last year. A lot of people didn't notice because it was such at the back half when we got this, but it was a lot of fun, like in July, us going back, kind of revisionist history, right? Be able to look back and then kind of see, okay, well, here's our player ratings. These guys fit. These guys don't. Watch out for this guy. Like, for instance, I knew Bobby Wagner. I keep going back to Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. I knew were going to be fantastic together. And they, sure enough, here they were both all pros. So it's just crazy. One of those things that if you're a fan, it's going to amplify your knowledge. It's going to give you a little bit more. If you're one of those, I just want more data. That's where that's going to be for you.
Love it.
It's okay. Love it. This just came to mind when you just talked about this. One, if you're listening to this still, please check out FieldVision. Please check out FieldVision. Just great data resource, ran by great people. Check out Match Quarters as well, that our dude Coach Cody Alexander runs. I'm thinking of a player who probably doesn't have a path with the Chargers anymore, who used to play for Brandon Staley, Asante Samuel Jr. Kind of thinking that fit, right? And this is someone that I made a list even before Brandon Staley was announced as the defensive coordinator. I don't really worry myself about like the Saints cap situation anymore, because whatever. But he just seems like someone that was very successful in Brandon Staley's scheme and system in Los Angeles. They have a need of needing players in the secondary. I know they want to bring back Adebo if they can, but I don't think Jesse Minter and Harbaugh are going to bring him back, especially with Elijah Molden getting that extension. I don't even know what his advanced metrics with FieldVision Pro is, but that would just seem like something that would potentially, just as an example, I think like FieldVision Pro would kind of show you potentially would be a fit for a team perspective and like potentially like a player perspective.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, you can go in and you can research. Okay, we know we're going to play a little bit more zone. How was he in zone? How was he in? And then it's all based off of playing time as well. That's what a lot of those metrics are for. But to your point with him, anytime you have a player that was very successful with a team, and then the coach changes, and then he's not as successful, that's usually and they're going to get rid of him. That's usually an indicator of, okay, maybe he could be part of what we're trying to do. Because I do agree with you, especially with Tarheeb Still and Christian Fulton kind of stepping up. You've got Molden, who's that hybrid player, Derwin James playing everywhere. He's kind of the odd man out over there. So I do think, like, to your point, that'd be a really good fit for somebody to bring in, and you could probably bring him in on the cheap, which is always a good thing when you're talking about the Saints cap space.
Absolutely.
I know that's right.
Cody, I don't want to take up too much of your time. If you're listening to this, make sure you check out Cody's work at Match Quarters. Make sure you also check out Cody and Scott's and the whole team's work at FieldVision. We'll probably get Scott on soon this summer. We love talking to Scott, talking FieldVision. Just want the growth for both you guys to continue. We appreciate y'all. We love just talking ball with you. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming on as always, man. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm sorry if I drug some of your people into the deep end of the pool. But I'm a safe space. If you have questions, ask.
No,
I'm here to. I love teaching football, so
what's your Twitter handle again?
Yeah,
at the _coach_A.
Yeah,
and also Match Quarters on everything
follow.
else.
Yeah,
awesome.
Follow.
Awesome,
like must follow. I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Cody. And we're going to get out of here. We'll be back this upcoming weekend. We're going to do our Tyler Warren Prospect of the Week episode for Patreons only. And with that, we are out.
Peace.
O'Reilly.
You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.